are picking up this 1,200 page book. If Brandon Sanderson's writing was like a chip flavor, he would be like lightly salted or just like plain. That is so aggravating. Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. Today, we are starting the most intimidating book on my TBR, and you guys already know what it is, okay? I know that you guys already know what it is. August has literally just begun, and I feel like this is the perfect time to pick up this book, because if I don't pick this book up earlier in the month, I'm gonna feel like, I don't know, more discouraged to pick it up later in the month, because I'm a little bit scared, but I'm also very excited at the same time. Now, that book in question is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, it is time. We are diving back into the Cosmere and we are picking up this 1,200 page book. I think this is actually like 1,265 pages or something if we want to be exact. Hold on. Okay, I overshot by just a little bit. It is actually 1,258 pages. She's a thick one, but this is of course the first book in the Stormlight Archive series, which is, I would say, Brandon Sanderson's most popular, like well-loved series. Maybe Mistborn is like more talked about and more read because it's a little bit more of like a better introduction into his universe for newbies, for beginners. So I think more people read Mistborn versus Stormlight Archives. Hold on, let's do a fact check. So the Final Empire, which is the first book in the Mistborn series, has 898,942 ratings, and the Stormlight Archive 626,785 ratings. Okay, so Mistborn is definitely the more popular series in terms of like the most read, but I would argue the Stormlight Archives is the most highly praised. People really say that this series is Brandon Sanderson's best work. Like, it seems like it's really the heart of his Cosmere. So I'm excited to see what all the fuss is about. I'm excited to just like understand why everyone is so obsessed with this series, and I really hope I love it. I really hope this series has not been overhyped for me, because that is, you know, one of the worst, most disappointing things when you read such a well-loved, super hyped book and you just can't connect with it. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I really, really want to love this. Do I know what this book is about at all? No. I haven't really looked into the plot. I think this is one of those stories where you just want to let the author take you away on this journey. Like, I don't want to know anything going into this book. All I know is it's a high fantasy, it's multi-POV. We're gonna dive in, we're gonna jump in completely blind. Let's just dive straight into it. The most intimidating book on my TBR. Let's see if it really is this serious. Hello, my friends, it's the next day and we're about to do our 100-page update. I was just laughing because in most of my reading vlogs, I like to do a 100-page update for like all the books I'm reading. I feel like it's always just a good place to stop reading, give an update, give your like initial impressions. Like, you're far enough into the book where you have a good idea of what you think about the book, but you're not so far in that like it's still, you know, it still seems like initial impressions. But usually when I do the 100-page update, I'm usually like, I don't know, a quarter into the book, but look at this. Just, yep. That's what it looks like after you've read 100 pages of The Way of Kings. What do I think so far? I'm enjoying this, okay? I like the writing style so far. It definitely does feel more... Hi, Sage. What's with the claw? What was I saying? Oh, the writing style. Yes, it does so far feel definitely way more adult than the writing style in Mistborn, which I obviously like. That's what I was looking for. It seems overall just a lot darker. There's a lot more violence. There's some more gore in it. It just feels darker. so far overall, like immediately. We are establishing the world, and I feel like Brandon Sanderson has like a formula with his books. We first, like, I don't know, get a little introduction to the world, and then we get like a crash course on the magic system, and that's what happened here. He likes to explain his magic systems like pretty in depth near the beginning of his books by using a combat scene, like kind of a more simple combat scene where it's almost like one-on-one combat with someone else, so he can really describe the mechanics of how the magic is working. And we got that in the second prologue to this book. So there are 2 prologues, which I kind of found funny because I'm like, of course, if we're reading a 1200 page book, there's going to be 2 prologues. So there was one like prologue, like way back in the day, and then there was another prologue that was like a little bit more recent, but it was in the second prologue that we got the magic system explained to us. And I was actually talking to Freya this morning because, fun story, we are actually reading this book like together at the same time. We started on the same day. So we've been talking to each other about our initial thoughts, and she mentioned that she thought the magic system in this would be the same as Mistborn because we're in the same universe, and so it would kind of make sense that the magic system would be the same or at least similar, but it is different. I would say the mechanics of it are very similar in the sense that you take in or ingest like a source, like an actual material source, and then you kind of burn or use that power to alter forces kind of outside of you. So in Mistborn, you ingested metals, and then you could basically like push or pull on different objects, and there were more like forces outside of push and pull, but I feel like those were the 2 main ones. Where in this world, you ingest Stormlight, which I don't really exactly know like what Stormlight is yet, but you kind of like suck in the Stormlight, and then you use the Stormlight to alter gravity. Essentially, like you can take individual objects or people and alter their gravity, and it just kind of, yeah, feels like the Mistborn magic system but in a different font, so that's cool. Something I'm not 100% loving though is that I feel like I'm getting a bit of whiplash. I'm on chapter like 3 or 4 right now, but it's kind of chapters 5 and 6 because of the 2 prologues that we had, and every single chapter or prologue that we've read has a different POV and also a different timeline. And I do love a multi-POV fantasy, I do, but I generally tend to like when I can like spend some more time with the character first and then kind of slowly gradually introduce the other POVs. I feel like so far, because we've had like 1 chapter from each person, I don't feel quite attached to anyone just yet. I'm just kind of going along with the journey, the ride. But Sage, what are you doing, girly pop? What? You're just here to rip up my chair or what? I just don't feel quite attached to any character yet, but I know we're just still slowly building up this world, and this world is very cool. There are a lot of details to it and just little quirks to the world that I don't think were present in the Mistborn world. So I'm actually, so far, I'm enjoying this world more than the one in Mistborn. What is going on? I don't know if you can see what she's doing right now, but you are being so distracting right now, babes. What are you doing? What are you doing, girly pop? Okay, so now you're gonna be calm. Once I put the camera on you, you stop moving and just like pretend you've been sleeping this whole time. What did I want to say? Oh, we also start this book, like on chapter 1 after the prologues, we do start like very much in the middle of this really intense battle. So I always find that interesting when fantasies start that way, because I find that reading about battles tends to be more interesting for me when they are like at the end, like maybe at the end of a 3rd book in the series, because you like build up all of these emotions and attachments to the characters you're following, and then the battles feel more stressful. But we started, like we jumped straight into battle in chapter 1 here, so that's always interesting for me. But all in all, I am enjoying this so far. Oh, there are also like these little illustrations throughout the book. I've seen 1 so far, or maybe 2, because one of the characters we're following, she's like somewhat of an artist. She likes to sketch things, like sketch the creatures and things she sees around her. So I feel like that's a really cool way of just like inserting these illustrations throughout the book to give you an idea of what things actually look like. It definitely adds to the immersion of the world. Oh, and also I noticed in the author's note at the start of the book, Brandon Sanderson mentioned that he spent over a decade writing like this first book only, just like slowly piecing it together, building the world, writing parts of it. And like, yeah, I mean, it's a 1200 page book, and I'm sure it was even longer before it was edited down. So yeah, just a fun fact. I thought that was really cool that he spent like 10 years or more working on this book. Definitely a labor of love. I'm excited to see more, and so we're just gonna keep reading today. page like 150 and I feel like I'm finally starting to connect with the characters, which is like really wonderful. But I'm getting curious about the little epigraphs at like the top of each chapter, because I know in Mistborn there like was a big significance to them and they kind of like pieced together to become this big reveal, and I wonder if that's the case for this one as well, or if it's just kind of like mood things, like adding to the vibe, because that's just what it seems like so far. I'm starting to enjoy it. I feel like at the beginning it was kind of like info heavy, but it's starting to feel better at this point. Okay, but also in this world, I am loving the little sprens, like the little, I guess they're like sprites, but I'm just picturing them like little Tinkerbells flying around. I feel like they're so cute, and they add like this little whimsy to this world, which like otherwise is a very serious, dark world, obviously. But then, yeah, we have these like little spren things flying around, and I kind of love them. Okay, I just read something that equally frustrates me, but equally like I also like that it's in this book. So Brandon Sanderson is really good at like inserting commentary into his books in a way that makes sense to his books. Like all of the political elements that he includes in his stories don't feel like propaganda, and they don't feel like so in your face. They feel nuanced and they feel very natural to the story. And there's this one moment here where our female protagonist, she's trying to buy books, okay? And in this world, it's kind of like backwards compared to like the history of like our world. In this world, it's like improper for a man to learn how to read, to know how to read. And so while the men are still like the businessmen, like they take care of like the money and everything, the women are the ones who read. And so the men need women to like help read to them. Like the men will still study, but they won't actually read. Like they need someone to read to them, which is kind of a strange and bizarre concept. But anyways, our female main character is trying to buy books, okay? And she asks for a bunch of these academic books, things about like history and philosophy. And the man who runs the bookstore immediately starts being like, oh, but like, wouldn't you be happier with just like a romance novel? So even in this backwards world where men do not know how to read, they still look down upon romance books and still relate them to like, oh, that's like, you know, women only read silly little romances. Like that still exists in this world where men don't actually know how to read and women are the only ones who read. That is so aggravating. But also kind of love that Brandon Sanderson like threw that into here as just like a little quip on the world. Thought I would share. Hope that wasn't like too much of a spoiler. I feel like it's kind of a vague general concept that's in this book versus like giving away actual plot points. So hopefully that wasn't too spoilery, but I feel like I just had to talk about it. I think I'm gonna go outside and read a little bit though now. So we'll see what I get to. Okay, it's the next day. We've been reading, okay? Look at that progress we've made. I think that is a pretty good dent in this book. We are at page 376. So we've read like basically almost the equivalent to a regular sized book at this point. I'm gonna like round up to 400 pages because we're at 376. First of all though, I did just receive some really fun book mail. So I already opened it. I already took it out of the package, but I just got Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Lovely Daphne sent this to me. So Daphne, thank you so much for sending me this. I know you also sent me Sounds Like Love a couple weeks ago, and you are just feeding me the best books right now because obviously I loved Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. And I know you did mention this is one of your 5-star reads this year. It's also your husband's favorite book. So I am so excited to get into this one. So grateful for these gifts that you have sent me. But yeah, that was just something really exciting that arrived on my doorstep today. And I definitely want to read this before the movie comes out because I know the adaptation is coming out in March of next year, I think. So I have some time to read this, but I definitely want to get to this sooner rather than later. I'm definitely gonna have to pick this up soon. Thank you so much. But back to the book at hand, or the brick at hand, I like to say. As I mentioned, I feel like this is enough to like make up an entire book of its own. But as I'm reading through, if I were to break off this book at this point, I would not be satisfied. It definitely doesn't feel like I've experienced enough in this book to qualify for like its own standalone book at the 400 page mark. But at the same time, I feel like this is not moving like extra slow or anything. I personally don't feel like things are moving slow. I know a lot of people have told me that the beginning of this book definitely like it's a slow moving ride because you're world building and all of that. But to me, I don't know, when world building is done well, it doesn't feel slow to me. So I think that's been very good in The Way of Kings so far. I haven't really felt a moment where I've been bored. Every chapter has its purpose. I was talking to Freya though last night about his writing style. We were trying to figure out like how to describe Brando Sando's writing style, because for both of us, his writing is not the most like, it's not our favorite writing style. Like it doesn't stand out in any way, but the way he tells stories is still very good. Like he has interesting worlds, interesting characters, interesting plots, but his writing style is like not our favorite. It's not super addictive or anything like that. And I came up with this analogy last night, okay? If Brandon Sanderson's writing was like a chip flavor, he would be like lightly salted or just like plain chips, like plain Lay's. I think in the UK the equivalent is like Walker's chips. It doesn't give any flavor. Like it's not very seasoned. It's just honestly, like if you look at the writing itself, it's very bland, but the stories he tells are very good. But at the same time, his writing, it's not that type of writing that falls away and you don't notice it. It's very plain, but you notice that it's there still. Like I don't experience this with any other author, but when I read Brandon Sanderson's books, I can literally hear his voice talking to me. His writing style, I feel like, is so him that when I read his books, I can hear his voice like narrating it to me in my head. So it's not like his writing falls away, but it is just like very bland, but it's not necessarily a terrible thing because it does not get in the way of his intricate worlds and characters and plots that he, you know, is trying to convey to you. I guess his writing is like a plain chip, but then like the characters are maybe like the toppings on the chip, and then like the world is maybe like if you dip the chip like in a nice like fun dip. I don't know, we're getting carried away with this chip thing, but that is how I feel about his writing. It's still not my favorite writing styles ever, but yeah, I think his stories are interesting enough that I can kind of live with it. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion. Let me know what you think about that. I have experienced now, I have gone past the point where we finish part 1 in the book, we have a bit of an interlude, and then we start part 2 of the book, which follows different POVs. So one of the POVs from part 1 carried over to part 2. So I guess he's like the main character of this book, but then all the other POVs changed to other people. And I'm kind of sad because the other main POV in part 1, the female character, I really liked her story and I wanted to see where it was going, and she just kind of disappears in this part. I don't know if I like this whole like part 1, part 2 thing, that it feels so divided. I kind of wish we would just have all of their POVs like mixed together. That gave me a little bit of whiplash because I feel like we got to the point at the end of part 1 where I started to feel attached to the characters. Like I started to care about them, and then it was like, okay, part 2 starting. Like, forget about those characters. We're following these like 3 other characters now. But I am now settling back into part 2, which means part 3 is probably going to start soon. But we'll see who we follow in part 3. I think those are most of my thoughts for now. Oh, you know what? No, I have one more thought. It's about Hoid. Okay, and for all of you who are experts in the Cosmere, you definitely know who Hoid is. He seems to be just this recurring character that appears in every single Brando Sando book, and sometimes he's just like a fun little cameo, and that's what he was in this mention, at least so far. Like, it was just a Hoid mention. It was like, oh, we're looking for Hoid, and I'm like, oh, there he is, there's Hoid, but we didn't like further elaborate on that. And I think it was kind of similar in the Mistborn trilogy where Hoid was just like a little cameo, but in Tress and in Yumi, Hoid acted as like the narrator of those stories essentially, so he had a bigger role in those. So for all of you Cosmere experts, I have a question for you. Do we ever like figure out who Hoid is? Like, is there a Cosmere book where Hoid is the main character and we actually learn what he is and like why he knows everything he knows and why he is in every single world? Like, do we ever figure that out? Please let me know, because right now he's just kind of like a Where's Waldo thing where like when you see Hoid, you're like, ooh, it's Hoid. But apart from that, like, I don't really understand his purpose. But yeah, gonna keep reading some more. I'm actually very impressed at how quick I've gotten into like the almost 400 page mark, but I also had a lot of time to read yesterday, so we shall keep going. guess who's over halfway through? Look at that beauty. So I'm on page 730 currently. I'm just vibing with it, to be honest. I feel like this book has been very surprisingly easy to follow. Like, yes, it's very daunting. Yes, it's very thick. But I honestly, like, apart from the two first prologues that were kind of confusing to me, and I was mentioning with all the shifting of like the POVs and the timelines back and forth, that was hard to like get into for literally like, I don't know, maybe the first few chapters. But ever since then, everything's been straightforward. Everything has made a lot of sense. I've been able to like blast through this book so quickly. Obviously, as you can see, like a lot quicker than I thought I would. Everything's really simple. Everything's really easy to keep track of. And I think I mentioned I was like kind of against the like separate parts in this book where we switched to like a different set of POV in like part 1 versus part 2 versus part 3. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually helping with the comprehension of everything that's going on in this world, because you're only ever following like, I don't know, 2 to 3 POVs at a time. So I can see now why Brando Sando has formatted the structure of his book this way. It makes sense. And yeah, everything's easy to follow. There are some names that feel very similar. There's like a Laral versus a Lirin versus a Lamoral, and there's a like Janala versus a Jasna, etc. But I think all the similar names belong in different POVs. They all belong in different plot lines, that it's like I'm not confusing them with each other. Even though they sound similar, they are presented to us in such different contexts that I'm not like mixing up their names as I'm reading, you know what I mean? Because one will appear in only part 1 and one will appear in only part 2. But yeah, just kind of like similar to what I said in our last update, I just think that Brandon Sanderson's writing it's not my favorite. There's nothing like outstanding about it, but it's kind of just there, and I can see that he makes really good choices in terms of his storytelling. But I am enjoying being in this world. There's definitely like the one main POV, Kaladin's POV, who he's in all the parts, so he definitely seems to be the main like hero in this book. I am enjoying his story the most out of all the POVs, so it's good that he's the one that we stick with throughout the entire book. I really like his character. I really like everyone he's interacting with. I love it. And also, why did no one mentioned to me that there was a wonderful found family in this book? I feel like if people told me there was like a strong found family trope in this book, I would have picked it up sooner. Maybe not, but there is an amazing found family that is shaping up to be very, very wonderful, and I'm excited to see where we go. Like, I'm really invested in it. I am just waiting for the moment where all of our POVs collide. I'm assuming that doesn't happen until part 5, but yeah, I'm just seeing how everyone's plot is unfolding, and I'm seeing them kind of inch closer and closer together to like potentially meet. I just want to see all of our characters like face to face. Lots more reading to do. I guess we have around 500 pages left. We're gonna keep going. Guys, guess what time it is? It is Sanderlanche time! So I am at this point in the book where we are so close to the end. Oh my goodness, I have been blasting through this, and we are going to finish it today, okay? Because I am on page 1026, which is kind of insane to think about the fact that I'm at 1026 in this book and it's still not done. There are still 200 pages left. But if you are familiar with Brandon Sanderson's work, the last like 100 pages or so of his books tend to be referred to as the Sanderlanche, where things just go really, really insane. Everything becomes really chaotic. It's just like, you know, that typical, like in the fantasy genre, that super high stakes, really chaotic feeling ending of a book. I feel like we are just about to enter that phase. I'm just gonna sit here, I'm gonna plop myself down right here, and we are going to finish The Way of Kings, okay? And then we will get into our final thoughts and like anything else that came up in, I don't know, since the last update. Okay, Sanderlanche time, let's do it. Hello, it's me. I'm back. I did finish this book and then I went to have lunch because I needed a little bit of a break to process my thoughts after finishing this, because there were a lot of thoughts going in my head and I was just trying to think of like what I wanted to rate this book overall. I think this was a wonderful book. I think it was so well done. The world building was wonderful. The characters were all really interesting to read. I really like how this book focused on morality and the psychology of being in war. Sort of similar themes to like what Rin was struggling in the Poppy War, for example. Definitely very different books, vastly different books, but just in terms of the decisions that you have to make when you're in a tough place like war, prioritizing who to save, who to sacrifice. Do you give into your own greed or your own grief, or do you stay strong and just keep trying, like keep going for the greater good and sacrifice yourself to help others? There are a lot of lines that are discussed throughout this book, and we see into our characters' heads as they decide if they want to cross those lines or, stay in their zone. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading every single POV in here. There are definitely characters I like better. I will have to say Kaladin was definitely by far my favorite character to follow throughout this entire book. They all went on such a different journey. It was nice just like switching back and forth between all of them. And I think also what I love about books that are serious is when they can be funny at the same time. Like there are quite a few lighthearted moments in here. There are quite a few jokes that are made poking fun at the characters or the situation. Like there is a little bit of humor in here that kind of like lifts you out from under this like rock of war that this book is. And I always appreciate that. So that was super well done too. And I think like after finishing this entire book, I am quite satisfied, which I think is a difficult thing for authors to do when they're writing series, is that I find with some books in series, when you get to the end, you're either too satisfied where like too many things concluded and you don't feel intrigued to pick up the next book, or it can be the other way around where the author does not conclude enough for you and you just feel frustrated and you will pick up the next one just because you have to, but you don't feel happy about it because none of your questions were answered and you have to keep reading to resolve those. Those are definitely pet peeves of mine when reading series, but Brandon Sanderson does it really well. There was also, while I was reading this, there was a moment where, okay, we're gonna get into spoiler territory for a little bit because I don't know how to talk about this without saying the spoiler. So if you have not read this book yet, please skip to the time code on screen. I will give you 5 seconds. Okay, you've had your time. Page 849. This is in like Shallan, Jasna, and Kabsal's story. It's the moment where they're eating the bread together and then find out that the bread is poisoning them. And then, Kabsal, he doesn't make it. I don't know how to say his name, by the way. But he doesn't make it because he eats the bread and then Jasna has to save Shallan. While I was reading this, I noticed that Jasna did eat the bread and then was not affected by the poison. And that wasn't answered for the longest time because after that moment, we basically, I think we had one more chapter of them, but then we went into part 4 where we did not get Shallan's POV anymore. And so for the longest time, for probably like 300 pages, I thought that was a plot hole that Jasna ate the bread, but it wasn't poisoned. And then it was literally answered right at the end of the book in part 5. So I don't know, that was just a funny kind of a moment for me while reading this. I was like, aha, I've caught a plot hole in this book. And then it was answered at the end. So no holes, no plot holes, okay? But something that I actually did not like in this book is still his writing style. There's something about it that my brain still does not get along with. And I think a lot of it has to do with his over-explaining of everything. And at some points it is good because he over-explains so that everything in his world seems very simple and is very easy to follow. But there are times that I catch it and I'm like, why did we have to be so wordy with this? For example, I took a picture of this little blurb yesterday when I was reading, and this is not going to have any spoilers in it. It's just a very generic quote in the middle of combat, and like out of context, there's no spoilers in here. Like no plot points will be revealed. And this is on page 892. So you would think at this point, right, we have already learned the magic system. We have been in this world for almost 900 pages. We are familiar with everything. But Brandon Sanderson writes, "Damnation," Seth thought, lashing himself upward with a quarter of a basic lashing. That didn't pull him upward. It just made him much lighter. A quarter of his weight was now pulled upward instead of downward. In essence, he became half as as heavy as he had been. And that is just far too many sentences to describe what just happened in that combat sequence. In my opinion, I feel like that could have been reduced to one sentence, like maybe two if you really want to explain things. But the fact that that little tiny moment took 4 sentences, it's actually an entire paragraph the way it's formatted in the book, it's too many words to describe that one little thing that happened in the combat sequence, and we already know how it works at this point. It was just too much. Is it just me? Like, is it just me, or does someone else feel that way too about his writing? Because I noticed it more in Mistborn, because in Mistborn there were a lot more of those like really specific in detail combat sequences, and it didn't happen so much in The Way of Kings because we didn't get as many of like that type of moment, but it was still there. It was still present. And I don't know, it's just something that I cannot agree with his writing. It just bugs me every time I see it and sort of takes me out of the book. But that's just kind of honestly the only thing that I can fault about this book. That being said, for a final rating for this book, I've been sort of like in the 4.25 or 4.5 range, I think. So very, very high rating. I think I'm gonna do 4.5. I think I'm gonna give this a 4.5. I tend to like to round up in my ratings, just something about me, but definitely a wonderful fantasy. Kind of feels like a quintessential fantasy book. Like if you were to think of the, like everything, like all the components that you need for a really good high fantasy, they would all be in this book. It's kind of like textbook fantasy in a way. So after 5 days of reading the 1,200 pages in this book, do I think this book had to be this long? Do I think this had to be this serious? Yeah. I would say yes in this case. I think almost every page was well deserved. Everything happened for a reason. I feel like the overall impact you got at the end of all the character story arcs would not have been as strong if you didn't go through everything you did with everyone. So yeah, and now I need to go book shopping or something because apparently I need to buy the rest of the series. That being said, that ends our Way of Kings journey. I cannot believe I have finally read this book. It's been staring at me for so long from my TBR. So really happy I've gone ahead and just like done it. I'm going to leave you guys here for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do like these more like single book vlogs where I only read one book but then focus more on it, like give you more detailed thoughts about it, let me know, and then also let me know like which specific book you would like to see me do. But yeah, if you did like this video, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know if you've read this book or not and what you thought about it. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!